Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I think we're ready to begin. Just to repeat the earlier housekeeping point before I hand over to Travis and Bradley, everyone has been muted on entry, so please send any questions through to the Hays WebEx host, and we will endeavor to answer them at the end of the presentation. And now, without further ado, I will pass it over to Travis.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Topic is obviously global trends in talent solutions, and I'm joined here by Bradley. Bradley?
Yeah, so we'll go through a couple quick introductions. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I'm Bradley Pierson, the Managing Director in the Americas for Hays' outsourced recruitment division, Hays Talent Solutions. I joined Hays in 2012 following Hays' acquisition of our proprietary VMS application 3-story software, for which I was the COO at the time. Now I lead Hays Talent Solutions across the Americas, ensuring our clients retain a competitive advantage in talent acquisition from Hays' MSP and RPO services. Travis O'Rourke supports our clients in finding the right answer to their unique recruiting challenges. Travis has a lot of experience in contingent workforce management. He's specialized in temporary and contract workers for the past 15 years and is a member of the National Association of Canadian Consulting Business Board of Directors. We're also very fortunate to have Wael Safwat on the line. He's the chair of the CIPS Canada and will be answering your questions at the end of the presentation. He's got 20-plus years of procurement experience and has worked in the UK and the Middle East before moving to Canada. Finally, before we get into the conversation about global trends, it's important that you understand our perspective. Hays has delivered MSP and RPO solutions across the globe for over 20 years, and we operate in 33 countries and have a very strong local understanding of what's happening in these markets. So with that out of the way, let's move on to some of the trends. Starting with the first trend we're seeing this year is a focus on bringing SOW under contingent workforce management programs. We've been saying for a while now that statements of work are and continue to be the primary source of rogue spend. At one client recently, hiring managers were able to move their workers from traditional staff log engagements to SOWs to circumvent their tenure policy. In many cases, the worker was added to an already active SOW, which meant that it was completely undetected and below the radar. Even in cases where there's a legitimate deliverable or milestone-based contract, it's important that your company has the appropriate controls and processes in place to ensure that all non-employees on your site or in your systems have undergone the appropriate compliance measures. This requires a different level of expertise, especially as it may bring additional complications of multiple regions and offshoring. The good news is that technologies such as the VMSs on the market have improved to accommodate the complexities of SOW engagements, including milestone or deliverable-based invoicing, as well as project teams that include a mix of time and materials and deliverable or milestone-based billing. While this is a newer development in contingent workforce management, it's something that we do have experience with around the world. What I would emphasize to you is that you want all of your workers, regardless of how they've come to work for you, to go through the same compliance process, the same background checks, same registration process to make sure that you're meeting all of your requirements, both from an internal company perspective as well as from an external perspective. So once you have that in place, then the benefits are numerous. You can track how much you're spending, you have assured compliance, better control, and you can improve your risk profile across the entire non-permanent workforce. As we've engaged in these programs, we've taken a number of distinctly different approaches on this, kind of dependent on what the client needs. Some of our clients have embraced SOW as simply another term for a limited company contractor, as is the case with a large international investment bank that we manage this for. As a regulated organization, they have a comprehensive and mandatory onboarding process. This includes compliance around anti-bribery and corruption, data security, and anti-money laundering. We provide an end-to-end solution where we take full responsibility for the external staff, encompassing individuals delivering under SOW. This is physical and logical access for new starters, all the way through to extensions and termination. This robust accountability underpinned by some commercial changes allows them to have complete visibility of how many external staff are active, how many have been extended, how many have been terminated in any given period, while at the same time mitigating any risk during the assignment or after the worker has left. Another client that we're managing SOW for is a large pharmaceutical company, and they identify their SOW as a bit of an unfortunate practice where workers, which would otherwise be considered staff aug, were engaged under an SOW to avoid being counted as headcount. So for this client, we identify and challenge the nature of these contracts, and where necessary, we'll recategorize the terms in which the individual is engaged, how they're paid, and bring them into the MSP. Where our clients have a true SOW, we audit that contractor population for compliance, confirm that the SOW is true and legitimate, and then we isolate the consultancy spend, track the accountability, and therefore mitigate all of the risk around some of the hidden costs that can creep up in an SOW.
Right, risk is going to be kind of a common theme as we go through everything here today, and it's a headlining trend too here. During the last 12 months, we've seen risk overtake cost as the key driver for outsourcing, and it's of course most apparent in non-permanent or the contingent workforce. It's just fundamentally, the less information you have about a subject, the riskier decision is likelier to be, or, I mean, simply put, the unknown tends to provide more risks than the known, and I think most people would agree with that. Yet most organizations don't really know much about their contingent workforce. In fact, I can count on one hand the amount of times that during a discovery exercise with a client that they knew exactly how many temporary or contract workers were on their sites today. It's usually, I don't know, 50 or 60, or maybe it's 200. And it's a population of workers that has access to the same IT systems, the same office space as your permanent employees, but they've likely only had one interview and possibly not even any background checks in order to get there. And logically, you'd probably want to check these fly-by-night workers out even deeper, but the opposite tends to be true. So, as a result, reducing this risk portfolio specifically by implementing kind of rigid MSP constraints through your contingent workforce management programs is being adopted all corners of the globe. Your MSPs should be frequently auditing the suppliers, not just the workers, to ensure that everybody is adhering to your onboarding and compliance guidelines. And if you couple a strong MSP with an advanced VMS, organizations will have, I guess, full visibility into the entire non-permanent population, but they will also act as a central repository to verify that all that onboarding and compliance documentation is done and it's kept on file. So to meet these requirements, what we're seeing is decentralized kind of compliance functions being deployed in shared service locations around the world. At this point, I think I'd say Poland and the Philippines are probably the two most popular countries. And organizations are weighing that risk between whether they're going to invest in these internal shared services or MSP services versus the fallout of a preventable mistake, which is sometimes difficult to quantify. But we find that centralizing these compliance functions as kind of like a multi-region or at least multi-office shared service helps to ensure that your head office requirements are also being met in your smaller satellite locations. Now, a rigid onboarding process isn't just about making sure a worker doesn't have a criminal record. It's important, of course, but globally, what qualifies someone to work as a contractor in a business-to-business project versus as a temporary employee will vary greatly from country to country. So you can have a Java developer deliver the exact same service using the exact same tools for the same cost as a business in Canada and an employee in the USA, and they would rightly be classified accurately in both countries. Like the legal requirements to not just qualify for the status, but to remain legal for the entire length of a contract are so finite, but yet so vague, that most companies are just closing their eyes and hoping. An entire industry is actually being built around this confusion, with tax accountants and lawyers and independent contractor verification organizations popping up all across the world. We're seeing it UK, US, Canada. But now, rather ironically, these risk-aware organizations, in order to protect themselves from the unknown of a worker's background, have implemented these processes which can take 2 or 3 days to complete, and they've inadvertently killed off the concept of the original temp. So if Billy in payroll is sick and you need someone for the week, but you need 3 days to make a worker compliant, it kind of cancels each other out. So without a solution, trust me, your business users will just get frustrated. They will find ways around the system, and once it springs a leak, watch out. So a big trend that we're seeing is called direct source. It's where you're outsourcing your entire temporary recruitment process to a company who will keep pre-qualified or pre-checked workers ready to go for your high-volume roles. Keeps your suppliers engaged because they know the work is exclusive, and your business ends up getting workers on time without really compromising your compliance requirements. So an example, in 2004, our UK team was brought in by a global financial services firm. They had one of the largest populations in the UK. We're talking 1,000 plus workers easily, and they were managing the entire workforce using Excel spreadsheets. Time capture was being done through email, and the email is often actually deleted at the end of the day. So we brought in a sophisticated VMS system, especially back in 2004. It was still sophisticated. And we helped to track their workers and their spend, but also to ensure that all compliance documents were searchable and auditable. Very important in financial services. We formalized the program, tweaked it a little bit over time, and then today the same team exists. We manage about 700 fully compliant payrolled workers for that company.
Yeah, the next thing I want to talk about is payrolling, because this is something that we're seeing increase across the board. And this is basically engaging resources that are identified by our clients, so there's no recruitment involved. And as states and provinces implement stricter regulations and organizations expand outside their local or national borders, making sure your contingent workers paid accurately and that records are kept in compliance with local legislation becomes a much bigger challenge. Payrolling is one of the busiest spaces in Canadian human capital at the moment because it's one of the most complex part of managing a contingent workforce, especially one that increasingly has complicated worker classifications, as Travis was just alluding to, and some of the regional legislative differences. It's incredibly challenging to ensure consistent onboarding and compliance, which means that your temporary and contract workers may not all be getting the same experience, and also that your company may be liable if some of those requirements are not being met. On top of that added level of consistency and compliance, we often see an increase in engagement among the contingent workforce because they're now getting a better, more consistent service when there's a payrolling service engaged to look after that workforce. If your internal payrolling department was established to manage your permanent headcount, it's normal that your contingent workforce isn't getting the same or consistent level of service. And as an MSP or a payroll services provider, we have a dedicated team that ensures that all of your temp and contract workers are getting the experience that you would hope that they get. As an example is, we partnered with an Australian finance, insurance, and banking company in Brisbane to deliver payroll service because of these increasing complexities. Although they had their own database for this purpose, there were no central processes to analyze the workers. This meant that they weren't able to determine tenure for the contractors, how much overtime was being worked, and there was essentially no cost tracking, no transparency on pay rates, and the correct award classification was not available. Given the inherent risk associated with this, they reached out to us for some alternative models. We implemented our VMS resource software to payroll the temporary staff for the business, allowing for award compliance, which for those of you that aren't aware, awards in Australia are effectively their overtime strategies, but they're very complicated. For one job, it's a 50-page document describing how you're supposed to pay that worker. So by implementing the application, we're able to guarantee the compliance and transparency, as well as provide them the ability to create dashboards and analyze the spend and tenure by business unit, opening up a whole new world of control on their cost.
Great. Global uncertainty. Obviously, turn on the TV or open a paper today, and you're not going to have to look too hard to find some of that. And it's really shaking up the employment market, specifically in finance and IT. I mean, we spoke a little bit earlier about the growing popularity of centralizing compliance functions, but this is absolutely not unique to compliance. Here in the Americas, we are working with more than one organization right now to build out an entire IT shared service facilities in Mexico. Many companies are creating these kind of shadow functions, or they're accelerating their global business relocation strategies to make the most of cost savings from offshoring these non-client-facing roles. So while you might keep your head office in New York, or your web development might be done in Manila, or your IT support might be coming out of Chile, and organizations are building these global talent management programs to ensure they're getting the best person for the job at the best price, not just the best person who's in New York at the moment. So no longer does all of the project recruitment that we're doing have to happen in the same city that the project is actually based in. We're seeing a hub and spoke angle, I guess you could call it, work really well for a number of companies who are looking for a more global approach to their hiring. An example, one of our clients in the Middle Eastern and European division of a Fortune 100 engineering and tech company said they wanted to decrease their staffing cycle, increase their hiring manager satisfaction, and also improve the quality of their new hires. So what they did, they decided they needed an RPO provider. Fortunately, that was us. But the challenge was they needed us to be able to ramp up and down depending on where their market was growing. So we came up with something called a co-source model. We built a central multilingual resourcing hub in Poland, but we also built kind of local little dedicated mini hubs around the world, all networked to the central operation, but able to provide more of that face time on a one-to-one local basis. There was a substantial need in Romania. The language wasn't widely spoken outside of the country, so we moved in, set up a local hiring hub in Bucharest. In the first year, we exceeded the projected business case, increased the hiring manager satisfaction, and then cut that time to hire by about 13 days.
Yeah, so innovation, like everything else in life, there's an increasing investment in technology innovation to service the talent pools, the gig economy, in other evolving means of engaging talent. This is creating a technology ecosystem that is increasingly difficult to integrate into your recruitment programs, and really just to understand what is and is not valuable and effective. For example, there are a new generation of apps that allow workers to clock in based on their GPS or geolocation. They can manage payroll requests, and even for you to make sure your workers are where they need to be on time. But the challenge is that these don't all integrate into the existing platforms. So some of the FMS or contingent RPO initiatives and SOW functionality are all competing for attention within a very cost-constrained environment. There's not a lot of investment from clients in terms of their HR technology, or generally there isn't. So some of the recent disruptors are especially difficult to adopt, especially in areas like financial services, as there's a lack of understanding of the IT constraints, and the adoption can be difficult. The SOW and BMS service modules, which I spoke about a minute ago, are obviously a focus for investment. That we want to be able to ensure that they can manage the changing expectations, including, as I mentioned, milestone-based payment mechanisms, and payment to the vendors is now linked to the engagement and the supply of multiple resource types, as well as completion of projects and the like. In the freelancer management or FMS space, there are a lot of competing platforms. It feels like there's a new one popping up, two or three a week. And these programs are for sourcing talent, which they're competing also with the traditional methods such as direct advertisement and job boards. So while these can simplify finding your own freelancers, At this point, the price versus value proposition is yet to settle at a competitive balance with a traditional agency model offering enhanced value to workers. So it's still a bit of it in its infancy, but we're starting to see some of the dust settle in some of the more advanced players rising to the top. And we also look at contingent RPOs, where you have one provider that oversees all of the contingent hiring, payrolling, onboarding, and other stages of the employee life cycle. And this is becoming increasingly common in Europe and is already a popular solution in the UK and Netherlands. And that requires a special set of technologies, because you're having to manage your permanent recruitment through applicant tracking systems, your timekeeping and contingent requests through a VMS, and then you may have other solutions mixed in there, things like scheduling apps and that. So it's important that you're able to distill out what are the right technology solutions for you. At Hayes, we have a team dedicated to exploring technology and what might impact our market and what's coming up. We're constantly evaluating if new ideas and companies can enable us to better meet our clients' needs or improve how we do things. One example of this is a solution we developed for a client who is looking for a better way to staff large-scale, high-profile events. So you think about all of the people needed to staff large sporting events. So they needed a group of temporary workers who were going to represent their brand with excellent customer service and who are appropriately vetted, and that would potentially only be working 6 to 8 hours on a given Saturday, once or twice a month. So not a full-time engagement, very much a spot engagement with the worker. So our challenge was not only to find the people, but also to manage the compliance, the scheduling, the timesheet, and the backfilling process in an efficient and cost-effective way. Ultimately, we integrated a third-party app into our own proprietary systems. The app allowed us to build a technology platform where our talent pool could advise us of their availability via the app, which saved hours of back-and-forth phone calls to see who was and was not available. And it also made it easy for us to see who could be called out in the last minute. So even if we had a full roster, if there were other people available and somebody dropped out, we were able to plug them in pretty quickly. The worker, so we actually just would push out the open shifts via the app, and the workers would click a button and say whether or not they were available or not. And they also we could assign or reassign workers and cancel the shifts with just a few clicks. The worker would then accept or decline, and the roster would update. Candidate profiles would show us that all of their verification and compliance had been done. It would also show the cost of the worker, and even as we got repeat assignments for workers, you could start to track their performance, so we could build better teams. We also, as I mentioned earlier, with the GPS location, we use the geolocation on the app to monitor their check-in and check-out. So when they turn up at the stadium, we know that the worker is there. And that allowed us to not only assist with the timesheet, but it also allowed us to address tardiness and absences. So we knew, without having to walk around the entire stadium, who was on site and who wasn't, and if people weren't where they needed to be on time, able to send out requests for other people to fill the position. Ultimately, we saved, we estimate about 40 hours of manual labor per event, so effectively one full-time worker for a week. The feedback we've gotten from both clients and candidates has been very positive, and one of the sort of key victories that we had is we were actually able to fill 33 open roles for one event in 11 minutes. So it was pretty impressive to see the quick response from the candidates when we sent out the schedule.
The move from kind of the vendor neutral, really where your MSP isn't a supplier, towards the hybrid MSP solution where your MSP is a supplier is the next trend we're going to look at here. Bradley actually spoke a bit there, contingent RPO or direct source, depending on what you call it locally. in U.S. and EMEA programs specifically, it's being used more and more, being kind of more widely adopted, I'd say, primarily as a means to reduce cost, but also to ensure the compliance that we spoke about earlier. But ultimately, it removes the reliance that a company has on those high-margin agency suppliers. Now, to be frank, it's more common in a second or third generation program. It's once an organization has made kind of a lot of the gains and risk and cost reduction that you get through visibility, and they're really looking for that next big win for cost savings in the program. A direct source solution, typically delivered by your MSP or your master vendor, and they'll enjoy greater rewards in exchange for greater accountability. This is what you would call the hybrid model, and again, your MSP is most likely the key supplier. But a well-designed program should provide significant cost savings, but it does need to be approached carefully. Your current supply base is going to see a significant shift in the volume of business that they've at least been accustomed to. And if you don't manage it carefully, that decreased engagement could lead to that actual partnership ending, and they may end up supplying your competitor next door. One of the most common reasons that we do see the shift from neutral to a master vendor is that cost savings. One of our public sector clients originally appointed us to just consolidate their perm and temp recruitment third-party providers. They wanted kind of a bucket for professional services, a bucket for admin, and then an IT suppliers list as well, so 3 categories of vendors. And you'll achieve cost savings from an exercise like this, absolutely. But if you're looking for kind of that a bigger catch, you'll do what this public service company did, and they asked us if we could deliver in all categories, at least first, with a head start. And then after X amount of time, if we weren't unsuccessful, then we would engage the additional suppliers. We were, of course, excited about the opportunity. Performed, we think, reasonably well. We now manage all of their temporary hiring. It's about 100 million USD in contingent worker spend. But if we can shave 5% off of your other agency's margin at 100 million, that's obviously savings that are quite significant.
Finally, we're seeing an increase in the number of our clients consolidating their programs into one solution, and whether that's a multi-country or multi-region program that they're bringing into one program, or starting to combine into a single total talent program, which combines the MSP, RPO into one. As the ratio of employees to non-employees continues to change around the globe, we're seeing increased demands for programs which manage the entire talent acquisition process. The lines between recruiting non-employees and employees continues to blur because the market is realizing that regardless of the engagement type, the key factor is finding the right person for the work. The combined program allows companies to more effectively manage both employee and non-employee requirements by using the same talent pool. So having one team of or one talent acquisition team, you're able to have the one talent pool to draw on, whether you're hiring somebody for an internal full-time position or for a non-employee position. It also allows for more cost-effective marketing for open positions. Basically, you have to advertise a lot less because you don't have 2 disparate groups advertising for similar positions. If you're looking for a materials handler, or you're looking for a professional engineer, electrical engineer, you can recruit from one set of advertising for that. And ultimately, you've got a single point of contact for all of your talent acquisition, which drives down the cost while improving the quality of hire and also improving the candidate experience. So having this sort of the one program for it, you solve the candidate experience once and you apply it appropriately to the various engagement types. Similarly, we're driving some efficiencies into our multi-regional clients by delivering one unified program that's flexible enough to accommodate local customs and legislation. So our clients gain the visibility and control that they want with an outsourced recruitment program, but we allow them to meet the business requirements in each region so that as you expand out into other countries, those countries don't feel like, well, we're just being told how we have to do things. So it's very important that while you do have the one sort of global program, under that, it's got to be underpinned by effectively bespoke programs that meet the requirements, and whether they're legislative, customs, or just the business requirements in that given region.
Okay, some final recommendations, and we can jump into some questions here. I guess primarily, the number one thing, whether it's first generation, third generation program, you need to know where you stand. Visibility is the most critical factor. You can't fix what you can't see. So whether it's an MSP or a VMS or a combination of both, we'd suggest you do whatever it takes to get that visibility. Secondly, keep up with new developments, and that's from a technology standpoint as well as a service delivery standpoint. The evolution that's happened specifically in the VMS space in the last 5 years are incredible. A lot of the kind of smaller run systems that might be local have been dwarfed quite immensely by the changes that the larger providers have. So we'd encourage you to get out there, get some demos done. And then also talk to your colleagues, talk to your MSPs. Highly recommend you attend CWS or at least join an association of some kind. Just stay in touch. And then lastly, there isn't one solution that fits all. I mean, almost every program is bespoke, and it will vary greatly depending on the size of the organization. So it's true that large-scale contingent workforce programs were once just for big enterprise shops. Not so much anymore, and we're seeing many, many small to medium-sized organizations adopting this. Again, the initial kind of cost from a resourcing standpoint up front usually far outweighs those mistakes that were preventable had you had that visibility from day one. So with that, I will kick it out to the group here. Some questions have been coming in while we were typing here. I've done my best to ignore them as they're kind of distracting, but as long as we still have time, we'll go through a few here. For Bradley, what sort of cost is a company with 200 or so workers likely to incur in the first year as they try and get a program up and running? Bradley?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll say generally there shouldn't be any actual cost. One of the primary drivers behind a program is that you're outsourcing it, so we want to get it up and running for you pretty quickly and pretty cost effectively. Now, assuming by the question with 200 or so workers, we're talking about an MSP program. As we've all talked about, one of the tenets of an MSP program is usually some aspect of cost savings. Those cost savings are getting more and more difficult to realize, just because there's been a lot of cost consolidation in the market. But at a minimum, you should be at cost neutral. A program with 200 workers shouldn't be terribly complex, so there generally wouldn't be any implementation cost. Although, as a supplier, we often ask for them. The reality is that they're usually not part of the agreement. So you should be able to get through that without spending any money, and ideally saving some money.
Thank you. If there's any follow-up question to that, just type it in the box there. I've got one for Wael here. How can procurement leaders keep up with new developments? Wael, if you want to jump on that one.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for the excellent presentation. I think really procurement leaders should be highly connected and got a deep understanding about the global markets and the dynamics. But they should really clearly understand how the business will operate, and what are the key factors externally and internally that really drive their business. The ability of the procurement leader to develop a strategic relationship with key service providers across the market, with key peers within the same industry or other industries, absolutely important to ensure that, he's very well connected, he understands or can predict some of the challenges, and be able as well strategically to feed back to the leadership team within the organization about what's happening in the market.
Okay, good, excellent. Well, you know what? I've actually got one for you. I mean, you've worked in various places around the world. What are the biggest differences that you see in the procurement function in North America versus where else you've worked?
That's very good questions. Interestingly, procurement, whenever you go, they absolutely, very different in the way that people perceive procurement function within the organization. But since I moved to North America, I've noticed really why procurement here is slightly different in a sense that people tend to value the relationship more. There is always, I think now I've been seeing a lot of transformation going on across various industries and different organizations, looking to, I would say, global sourcing, start really building a long-term relationship with suppliers. I think there's start really a big trend on moving from what we call a cost-based relationship versus a value creation relationship. So I think really, it's an exciting time with regards to the procurement profession in North America, and it's certainly a great opportunity really for procurement professionals really to expand their capabilities and connect strategically with the market, with the service provider, and really build a strong professional brand.
Excellent, thank you. I've only got one left here, so if you have anything else, please send it through the box. But Bradley, I'll give this to you as your Mr. VMS. In order to get a VMS up and running, what time frame do we need? How intrusive is it from an IT perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is really, it depends. As far as the time frame is concerned, the setup of the VMS, it usually isn't what drives the time. Collecting the data, making sure you know who's working, where they're working, how much you're paying for them, and getting all of that information is usually what takes a bit longer. The actual setup, at least for us, it involves a series of workshops to make sure we understand the process flows. We want to make sure that we get the platform set up the way that you want to use it. But it shouldn't take longer than it takes to collect the data from your suppliers, understand your workforce, and do all of the training and change management that goes along with an implementation. That being said, generally speaking, an implementation takes somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks now. That can go a lot longer if you're talking about a multi-regional phased approach. It can also be impacted by internal schedules and then also internal competing priorities. As far as how intrusive it is from an IT perspective, that can run the full spectrum as well. On the one hand, we have clients that don't require any sort of interface. They're static data, so things like cost centers and buildings and the like are pretty static. They don't change much. So there's no need for an interface there. And if you don't need an an interface for invoicing, then you may not need much of an IT involvement. The VMSs are all cloud-based. They all sit outside of your firewall, and there shouldn't be any IT requirements from the client side. Now, that being said, we have some clients that we've done 5, 6, 7 real-time web services interfaces. We've had to do interfaces where requisitions are being initiated in systems like Ariba and then pushed out to 3-story software, and then the candidates have to go back into Ariba. So that can get pretty intrusive, right? And then that very much depends on the skill set that you have internally to be able to build those interfaces internally. But I would say, on average, it's minimally invasive or intrusive. But again, it just comes down to some of your business requirements.
Great, Bradley. One more has come in here. How many of your clients pass on the cost or fees associated to running an MSP program to the suppliers? For the benefit of the individual who asked the question, I can tell they're from the UK based on how they spell program, so perhaps if you can speak to that market.
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty similar. I would say the market right now, the vast majority are charging the MSP fees to the suppliers. We are starting to see more and more clients engaging in sort of monthly management fees with fees at risk via SLA and KPI, just because, as Travis alluded to earlier in the call, the focus is shifting from the cost savings to sort of more about risk and compliance and making sure that you have an orderly way of managing this group of workers. So for the time, it's most often passed on, but there's probably a shift coming. And even in some cases, there's a split. You know, the supplier's picking up half of the management fee, and the client is paying half. Or the client's paying the VMS charges, but the supplier's paying for the services. So I think we're starting to see more and more creativity in that regard.
Excellent. Oh, you know what? Sorry, this is about to end. This one more has just come in here. No, it's just a comment from our marketing team. Anyways, thank you to everybody who's joined us today. The audience is largely procurement based, and I would like to thank Wael for joining us. Wael is, of course, the chair of CIPS in Canada, but CIPS is, global organization, and if you're not familiar with it, earlier on in the deck gave some advice to join an association, talk to colleagues, find out what they're doing elsewhere, and CIPS is a perfect place to start. Encourage everyone to track down Wael on LinkedIn. Sorry, Wael, for throwing that out there. And he's a wealth of knowledge himself. So thank you to everybody for joining us today, and hope you took something from it.
Many thanks for the leadership of pay. Thank you. And for the audience.
Thank you, Wael. Thanks, Travis. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.